Father, I thank you for today. I thank you for tonight. I thank you for this impromptu service. And Lord, we love you. Again, we love Pastor Daryl and Wendy and the family. We thank you for our time on earth with Daryl. We thank you for the things individually and corporately that he has imparted into our lives. We thank you that he has a legacy of love and grace that permeates this city, and he is a world changer. We thank you that Daryl Roach mattered. He mattered to a lot of people. And I thank you that we get to share our hearts about him tonight, this one last time. And as we move to the next day to the next, help each one of us to mourn and grieve in the way and the length that we need. And as a church, Father, help us to continue to learn to love and have grace and acceptance for all. We love you, Lord. Amen.
Ever since me and my wife first came here, we felt love from all of y'all. And then I was able to meet up with Pastor Daryl, and he continued to pour into me. And it was wonderful, and I loved him. I admire the way he knew the word, the way that he preached, his intelligence, his sense of humor. I loved how he would tell the worship team that, oh, that was amazing. And just the things that he would say about me as well, who I was spiritually. I'm going to miss him so much. He was like my spiritual father. My niece also wanted to tell y'all that she loved him as well. She didn't know him as well as I did, but they could feel the love that he had, for them, the compassion that he had for my sister when she passed away, and just the love, So I'm going to greatly miss him.
I'll try to keep this brief. I think that one of the things, if you remember talking with Daryl, I remember going in thinking, I'd always go in thinking I was going to talk to him about one thing, and he'd always have me talking about something else. And I'll just say one thing real quick was he helped me through my divorce, and after several years, I went in there going, hey, I want to talk to you about just something about how to be more spiritual or something, really good. And he looks at me and he's like, I really think it's time for you to start getting ready to date again and start looking, being prepared for a wife. And I was like, okay, that's not what I want to talk to you about. But, okay, so we were talking about that. And he was right, because there was just a few months later that we ended up having nights of praise up here, and I was just praising God. And my wife was visiting a friend that also goes to this church, and she just saw me and thought she had to talk to me. And she talked to the right friend, because she actually knew me. And if you know my wife, she's the most amazing person ever. But I don't know that I would think to look for her or to know that I was ready for a person of that caliber without Daryl just speaking into my life and just telling me, no, you're ready for this, you're ready for this. And it was always things that I wasn't even thinking about. So I'm sure everybody else knows that.
Well, I'll talk. I mentioned about the farm at the funeral, and Daryl loved going to the farm, our family farm. And it was just so funny because I talked about hearing from the family and people about what a good listener Pastor Daryl was. Sometimes. Because when I would tell him, he literally would leave an hour, 2 hours after me so that I could get down there in the middle of a drought to see if the roads were really dry, even though it hadn't rained in a month. So I would drive and I'd call him and say, okay, the roads are fine. Are you sure? Dust is in my mouth. The roads are fine. Or I would say, Daryl, it rained. Don't come down the main road. Go to the other the gravel road. There's very little mud. You'll be fine. He would come down the mud road and not listen. I'm never going to get this mud out of my truck. I'm like, did you come down the road that I told you to? Well, no, I came down this one. Well, when you're leaving, if you'll go over this one, did he go down to? No, he went right back down the one he came. One time it took him like 10 wash trips in there to get stuff off. And then one time, instead of going the way I suggested, he left the mud road, and literally that expedition went 2 wheels in the ditch, and it was probably 2 feet of water. It was up to his door, and he couldn't get out. He went about 75 yards down the road, and then it popped out and went to the other bar ditch, and he was able to get out. And then he griped the whole time about the mud and how he almost died and all that. And I said, that's just terrible. Next time, use the gravel road to your right. But he never would. He never would listen. He had a passion for that mud road. So, okay, well, we're released. Thank you for coming. I'll give them a minute. They've had 14.
Hey, everybody. So when we first started coming to More, my wife and I, it was a particularly difficult season in our life. And at some point, I don't remember the context of everything, but something to do with when Daryl was preaching that Sunday, he said something about, like, feel free, reach out, in an email, introduce yourself kind of thing. And so I decided I was going to. And it ended up, like, I started writing this email, and it ends up being like a journal entry almost, It goes way too long and way too much stuff that you don't want to say or anything. And I don't remember, to be honest, whether in a fit of not my best self, I chose to send it or if I accidentally sent it. But I do know that immediately I regretted it. I was terrified and embarrassed that I sent this huge, long, pathetic sounding email. And I know that in less time than I would think it would take a person to read it and really think about it, I got a response. And you know how terrified you are to open the response. So I opened it up, and all it said was, "Thanks for reaching out, Daryl." Which did not help my anxiety at all about the situation, But eventually, I did get to know him a little better. And, for 5 years or whatever, 8 out of 10 Fridays, he would meet with me and just pour into me. And for a long time, I've never not cried up here, so let me try. For a long time, when we would finish, I would really thank him, for his time. Because I felt like he was elevated, and I didn't deserve his time. And he would always say, it's nothing, we're friends, we're hanging out. And I eventually got that. And for, a few months at the tail end there, we just hung out as friends every Friday. And then God called us away from More. But I'll always be grateful that he gave me that.
Thank you, Justin.
Hi, I'm David. Oh, wow, that's really loud. Maybe I just am. The first time I met Daryl Roach was right out here in the parking lot. It's several years ago. You guys were having this, I don't know, some sort of thing out there. Y'all had booths, and y'all were there was just booths, and there's a whole bunch of stuff going on out in the parking lot. Booths. Thank you. Anyway, easy. Man, it's church, y'all. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is the first time I met Daryl Roach, I was in active addiction. Matter of fact, when I walked over from United, I was high. I walked up, and all of a sudden, this guy, bigger, larger than life, just comes right up to me, up in my bubble. "Hi, I'm Daryl." And I was like, "Wow, you're really right there," And I was really hungry, and he invited me over. He said, "You want a hot dog?" And I was like, "Oh, yeah." And he just took me around to those booths, and they kept giving me these papers that told me about More and different ministries that was here. And this was all before I got myself into some other trouble later on. I shared this the other night in Crump, is that one of the greatest gifts I believe that Daryl had, is he had a way of making you feel a part of rather than apart from. And in each and every interaction that I had with the guy, at the end of that reaction, Daryl actually, to me, left the residue of God all over me. Not of Daryl, but of God. And I truly felt a whole lot better just about being me. And I'm going to miss that. And thanks for letting me share.
Thank you, David.
How's it going, everybody? I wrote something for Pastor Daryl a couple of days ago, and I just wanted to share it with you. A year ago, my mom asked me to come to church with her one Sunday morning. I was at a point in my life where I was disenchanted with the church, and I had no desire to enter into a church community again. I did it out of obligation. Then I heard Daryl speak. I haven't missed a service since. He exhibited such authenticity with his words. He spoke from a place that made you feel safe, that felt like home. No matter what I was going through in my own personal dealings, I always took refuge in his words every Sunday. He had the ability to challenge me while simultaneously bringing me a sense of peace and comfort. He was instrumental in my baptism and rededication to Christ. I'm so glad I got to share that honor with him and the church that he built. I'll never forget the time he took me to coffee and just let me pour my soul out to him, how he championed my endeavors and took time out to tell me he loved me every single Sunday. He saw something in me I didn't even see in myself yet. I only knew him for a short period, but the way he treated me, though, you could have sworn he knew me my whole life. He made me a better disciple, a better son, a better friend, and a better man. So glad I got to be a student to his teachings this last year. I'll carry those principles he imparted upon me and cherish them the rest of my days. Thank you, Pastor.
So most of you maybe know, like, our Amber and my story, big reason, well, the only reason why we're in Amarillo is because of this church. No offense, but it's the reason why we moved here from California. And it was a big deal when Kevin Prosh left, because Kevin was a mentor to me. And when he left, I thought that I really didn't have any place here anymore, or maybe because I was just a guy who just played on the worship team. I didn't have any position or leadership at all at the time, and so the studio was in a state of sort of disrepair and was needing to be there. The church was needing to decide what to do with it, and it was like, well, do we turn it into classrooms? Do we, make it into offices? Because there's not a lot of space in this church, and we always need more. So, but my brother and myself and Nathan Prosh were here recording an album, and we had set up, not in the studio because we couldn't, we had set up in the gym right outside the window of the studio, and so we were in there recording for about a week, and Daryl came in one day, and he was like, "Oh, what are you guys doing?" And he knew what we were doing, but he just wanted to chat and just see how it was going. He loved to just check in and just see how things were going with you, and we just got to talking about the studio, and he was like, "Man, we don't really know what to do with this space here," and I said to him, "Daryl, like this is a recording studio. It was built to be a recording studio. It wasn't built to be offices. It would be such a shame and such a waste to do that with this place." And he just kind of looked at me and was just like, yeah, I think you're right. And it wasn't but a few days later that the church hired me to start rebuilding it and putting it back together. And then very shortly after that, it took about 6 months, I think, to kind of get that project settled. And very shortly after that, Andy Squires was gone, and Catherine and I had taken over. All that's just to say that I always knew Daryl as a guy who was so open and so he never had his own idea set in stone about
what he wanted to do. He was so open. He always listened. He was very humble and pliable, and just an open guy, to what was being said to him and what the Lord was saying to him. I appreciate that. And I'm glad I'm here still because of it.
Well, Catherine said, about Saturday, she said about cooking for Daryl. I loved to cook for him because he made it sound like my food was the best he just tasted. It was just so good. And it just so encouraging. I just wanted to keep cooking for him because Lyndall is very picky eater and he doesn't appreciate my cooking as much, and Wendy does, but Daryl really did. And I found myself thinking, what would Daryl want? It's so funny. And he's such a good cheerleader. And I just, like, every time I was up here, no matter if it's just announcements or anything, I'd walk off the stage and there he was, and he'd say, "Good job, Becky." And so there's something in me that wanted to make him proud, and I know we all kind of feel that. I wanted to make him really proud. And so yesterday, I didn't know that Sunday when I was talking, they had gotten a chair for me to sit on. And it was the chair that Daryl would have been sitting on. And so, I don't know, it just made me feel like I felt like some energy from him and him just saying, "Good job, Becky." No matter if it was or not, I just heard him say, "Good job." And so, it was a really good feeling. As a family, we like to sit around and talk about our loved one and tell stories about them and laugh and cry together. And so that's what we're doing here tonight. And so, and Lyndall I shared this at some time, but oh my gosh, he would want to fix anything that I had wrong at my house. Or he would tell me how to do it, and he'd say, "Oh, Becky, it's no big deal. You can fix that. All you got to do is get this, this, and this, and this." And I'm thinking, oh, well, that still kind of sounds hard, but you said it's easy. But the last time, really, he was at our house, one of the last times he was at our house, I had a problem in the back with the water and the tubing, and literally we've got a big backyard, and he took the time to go with me several times and figure out what was wrong, and he fixed it. He fixed my water to where it would work, and I'm so appreciative of that.
I first came to Moore. My wife and I hadn't been together very long, and we wasn't even married at the time. But we came in. She suggested the place. Had been here a couple of times, knew about the prophecy rooms and the healing rooms and stuff. And I thought, I'll give anything a chance at least once. And so we came in, and we came a couple times. There's a couple of things that were said. One of the biggest things that was said and that really stuck with me was, there's rumors going around that we do prophecy or do palm reading in the basement. He said, "I assure you we have no basement." So, just that type of sense of humor that Daryl had, he could drag you in, and just like Justin said, he was able to find little bits and pieces of greatness in you and do what he could to bring it out of you, even if it took longer. He'd keep chipping away at you until, as long as you would communicate with him. If you would communicate with him, well, he wouldn't push you. And that was another great aspect about Daryl, is that, man, just the greatness thing, opened your eyes and, to what the Lord actually is, who the Lord really is, and for us to create and find that, and encourage us to find our own way to the Lord. That's just so unique about Daryl that I'll never have it again.
I guess about 20 years ago, we came to Moore, and we come from a church where they had a lot of leadership, but they were not. That's what they were. They were the upper crust. You were never going to be their friend, ever. And unless you could actually do something for them, they were not going to interact with you. It was almost like a business. And we came to Moore, and Daryl and Wendy came. We went out to eat, and Daryl said, we want to be your friends. And I remember thinking, right. Sure you do. You know, that's what a leader says. He says, I want to be your friend. What can you do for me? But over 20 years, Daryl proved to be such a steadfast friend. And he never wavered. He was always Daryl. There was not that two sides of like, as long as you're doing something for me, I'm this way. And when you're not, he wasn't. He was just Daryl. And he was such a good friend. And this last week, two of the things I'm mourning was, number one, he wasn't that much older than I am, but he reminded me of my father, who I lost when I was only 30, someone who I'd go camping with, that you could sit around a campfire and just talk in the quiet of the evening, and not really deep, profound things you could, but you could just share. And that's what I'm going to miss with Daryl, is somebody who you could just talk with in the quiet of the evening. And the Lord put on my heart yesterday, because I was thinking of Daryl and the refining and the DNA of our church. And God told me, he said, some things burn up, but the things of Daryl that's going to stay, his DNA, have gone through the fire, and it is gold. His legacy here is gold, and it will never burn up.
Hi, y'all, family. I'm going to talk about how Pastor Daryl helped me with my testimony. I had a kind of a hard testimony, but he said, Terry, I'd like you to, let's talk about your testimony. Okay. Well, I thought we were just going to talk about it, but he wanted me to write it down. And so I did. I wrote it down. I had probably about, 30, 40 pieces of scratch paper with all these sentences on it. And this one went over here, and then number 2 went over here, and then, well, this is a paragraph over here. And I was trying to explain it to him and talk, because I'm a talker. And so he just sat back and he goes, okay. And then he just listened to me for like, it felt like a really long time. And then he started understanding my story. And then he started understanding me. He always put levity in it. He always put something funny. So he was putting all the papers together. He's stacking them all up. And he goes, he always put his hand on his head. He goes, Terry. And I was in the pastor's office. You know what I mean? Like, I have not been in the pastor's office maybe about 1 or 2 times in my past, But I'm in my pastor's office. But he goes, Terry, do you know how to write a paragraph? And I said, yes, of course I know how to write a paragraph. He goes, well, do you think you can? And I said, yes, I think I can. It's so funny. We just laughed. And then he put it all together, and he stood up, and he went over to the window, and he opened or shut the shade, and he said, Terry, there's no rush. And he said, I want you to take your time, and we love you, and we know this is hard, but we know that this is going to be the best thing for you and for this body. And it wasn't about me anymore. It was about someone else, helping other people. And it helped me put it together so much easier. And the other thing he did is he helped me flip it from what was done. He helped me flip it into the great thing that the Lord had done for me. And that's what he wanted to talk about the most. No matter what the testimony is, he always pointed right to Jesus and said, this is what we want to talk about. We want to talk about, this is the part that we want to tell everybody is what Jesus did. And that helps pull everyone out. And so that's my story about my testimony. The last 2 things that he said to me was, be a good friend. Be a good friend. And that's what I'm going to remember the most is, and research the most, is how to be a good friend and love each other the way friends do. the way y'all do.
I was just thinking, I've been thinking all week, and it reminded me of something you said, Becky, but Daryl was, and I've heard a lot of people say that about being a spiritual father, because Daryl and I were really close in age, and yet he was still my spiritual father. I bounced everything off of him. You know, if my feelings were hurt about something in life, I don't know how many times he'd tell me, you need to rise above it, which I hated hearing, but I'm like, no, you're right. He told the truth. He just spoke the truth to me, you know, and I needed to hear things like that. But the one thing I was thinking about, and something Becky said, because I didn't know that Daryl liked food so much. That is not something I realized about him. But something I loved about him was every time I was ever around him, particularly in staff meeting, if anyone was eating anything, he asked you what you were eating. I loved that. I loved it so much that sometimes I thought about what I was going to bring to staff meeting to eat, so he would say that to me. I don't know why, but I think that was his special way of connecting with people. He just found a way to connect with you wherever you were, and it made you feel special. I mean, I was eating a rice cake, and we talked about rice cakes. Do you remember that? But he was always asking Catherine, what are you eating, Catherine? If I was eating lunch back there in the gym or something, he'd go, what are you eating, Kim? And he'd sit down and look at it and ask me how I made it or something. I'm like, I loved that. I know that sounds ridiculous, but it was like his way that he connected with me too, because I like food too. So anyway, he liked to share it. He loved to take a bite. He wanted to know about it. I'm like, it just made me feel special that he liked my food. So, yeah.
But he also stole a lot of candy from Children's Church when you weren't here. Okay. I just wanted you to know. Banana Laffy Taffies. Okay. But he was a thief.
So I want to tell you about when we first met, and I think it was in 1983, I think is the year. Is that the year Trey was born? Okay. He was 3 months old, and we went to a party at the Wilhite's house. So Carol and I are a young couple, and been married a couple of years, 81. And so it's 83, and we go to this thing, and we're playing volleyball out in the backyard, and it's all of that. You remember Ron? Whatever. Okay, anyway. And so the guys are out there, and we're doing it, man. And this guy, he's as competitive as I ever thought about being. To know him is to know that. And so anyway, I can remember Wendy's sitting on the side with all the women folk with a baby on her lap, you know, and they're all passing that boy around and doing that kind of thing. And it came time to gather up, and this is so-and-so and so-and-so, and, you know, tell us about yourself. Well, we have 2 kids, and they're called this, and yada, yada. You know, this is us, and this is Trey. And I can still remember sitting there going, well, you know, this is my wife, Carol, and I'm Johnny, and we have no children, but we will have in about 6 months. I can remember that. So we introduced our first daughter at that moment with them, and so that's just a moment in time. Let me move forward just a little bit. And so we're in his class, and I don't know what year this is, but it's later. And we're in a class at Coulter Road, and we're sitting in there with him, and a couple of different things. I can remember one time, I'd been baptized in the Holy Spirit when I was 20, and I'm in a Baptist church. That's where my family was. I went back there, and so I'm really kind of a closet, spirit-filled fellow. You don't go telling those people that stuff. and and so I'm you know, the wife and I, we go here, and we're in that new addition in the back, and Daryl's teaching the class back there, and like all good, you know, ministers, he's at the door. Oh, it's good to see you. I'm glad you came. You know, oh, it's good to see you. Oh, yeah. And Carol and I, we're at the end, and we show up, and we're talking, and he's hitting on it. He's talking to me about this spirit-filled stuff, and I'm like, man, because for years, I've been in this Baptist church, and I've had my mouth shut, and I'm in my 30s now, young 30s, I suppose, and Carol's standing there, she goes, oh, Johnny, Daryl, he's spirit-filled. And Daryl goes, I knew it. I knew you were spirit-filled, you know? I mean, you just knew. I just could never say it. So from then on, we were always talking about, well, what about this? Well, how'd this happen? Do this. I remember when he got baptized in the Holy Spirit, when he received his spiritual tongue, and he invited Billy and Twyla Compton and myself. And we went in one of those little back rooms over there and prayed over him. And before it was done, he had a few words, but he was, oh yeah, this was cool. This was cool. But, and just one more little thing back then. So he's teaching this class, and he's thinking he's going to step out of this class and go teach another class. It was the beginning of more. This was the beginning of it right there. And he says, and he got with me and he says, I want you to teach my class. Whoa. No pressure there. Me teaching Daryl Roach's class, you know. And it's the most spiritually prosperous class in the church. Though the leaders wouldn't admit that, but it was. And I was like, now, and he had to get with me 2 or 3 times to do this thing. And I did it. And wasn't long after that, had to ask Becky, or I did ask Becky, and she came, and she and I taught that class together. I remember when they showed up, it was little Spitfire Becky and that big guy that always sat in the corner with his mouth shut, pissed off. That's pretty accurate. But if you had an opinion, it was like, no, wait a minute. Yeah. So anyway, that's some beginning stories of my relationship with Daryl. And Wendy.
I can talk. Well, long time ago. I think it's been 20 years. That I saw this church. Had a prophecy and speaking in tongues and interpreted. I did it a couple of times here. And my son came to the recovery. Yes. And I just love this. I'm gonna miss him a lot. But we got invited to his house for supper, remember? Yeah. And he was so interested in us because we belong to the Way. Have you ever heard of the Way?
Yes.
And we came and we had the speaking in tongues and interpreting and prophesying. And I saw the sign outside. And I've been coming here for a long time. And I can't believe it. I just miss him. But he is with us. That's all.
Thank you. I want to just continue for a second what Johnny was talking about, because Becky and I, we were the newcomers. We only met him in 95. And so I love the Lord. I was a Christian. She was a Spitfire, go for it. But I was pretty accurate what he said. But I didn't really need all those people, friends. I didn't, all that stuff they were doing, praying for people to be healed and things like that. That was, so I'm going to go volunteer with the elementary boys. That was my escape, was to go help them. That was a nightmare if you've ever done RAs. Go with the spiritual people. So apparently there's no corporal punishment in church. But then towards the end of our time there, and I really wasn't close to Daryl at all. And towards the end of our time, I started going to this class they were doing on Wednesday nights called More, just for not near as long as everybody else. And then we have this meeting one night at the Ramirez house about it's time to start the new church. And I know Daryl and Wendy, but I wasn't close to them, probably not close to any of them. Then we have this meeting, and Daryl, the pastors are talking about this new church. And we've got this figured out, and here's the elders. Daryl's an elder. Yeah. Kyle's going to be an elder. Yeah. Lord told us that Johnny Saunders is going to be an elder. Yeah. Jim Hawley. Yeah. And Lyndall Waldrop. And I'm sitting on the stairs leading up to their second floor, high up on the stairs, so I really wasn't close to anybody. I said, Becky, what's an elder? I said, I haven't even decided if I'm leaving this church yet. And I'm a what? And so that's what everybody else was thinking. Are you sure you're hearing from the Lord? But the thing is, Daryl sought the Lord. He knew what was in me from talking to the Lord long before I knew what was in me. And I didn't need friends. I had friends. You know, there's friends and then there's friends. I didn't know I needed friends because I knew a lot of people. But over this period of time, especially since 2003, wow, boy, did I and y'all develop a best friend. And I didn't know. I really didn't know what a best friend was or what I had in one until 5:44 on July 4th. And at that moment, I realized my best friend is gone. And at that moment, I truly understood what a friend was. And I didn't mean to do this part. He saw in me in 1998 or 1999 what I would have never seen in myself. And if it wasn't for him acting like he heard the Lord and forcing me to pretend like he did, none of this would have ever happened. And because I set a 2-minute rule, I'm not going to tell you the other story right now.
This is just a continuation from Coulter Road. Camille and I started attending some of the Sunday morning classes. And Daryl was teaching this class. And I had this one guy. You had to see Daryl's face. You just had. When I tell you this, you'll just imagine Daryl's face. The guy said something about, well, we got some colored people here. Daryl just looked at him like, oh my God, he didn't just say that. And he did. And he never came back to Coulter Road. I think, I'm not going to say, Linda. Because my wife asked him, what color were they? So, but you guys know, y'all know, y'all have heard plenty of stuff about Daryl and his sense of humor and his cooking. I tried to teach him a few things, but he wouldn't listen. But I loved him, and I'm gonna leave it at that.
Daryl did have sense of humor. He loved to pick on us, and I remember just walking up and down the halls, and he'd say, "Are you gonna tuck that shirt in, or that beard makes you look like the Mexican Wolverine, or Abe Lincoln, or whatever, you know, Amish." I mean, I got it all from Daryl. So one day I decided to try to get him back. And for some reason, one night me and Trey were in charge of youth. One of our little youth kids come up and told me about a new app that allowed you to anonymously call people and prank call them. And we were going over, who are we going to get? Who are we going to get? Trey said, well, we can't get my dad. I'm like, why? Oh, he hates practical jokes. I'm like, perfect. So we did. We entered in the number which you would call, because it was a crazy app. I'm not going to tell you the name of it. But you can make it where the number that popped up would be whatever number you put. So we put the church's number, and we had it called Daryl. So he must have seen a call, and it records it, and I listened to his reaction, make sure it was youth-friendly. And so he answers a call thinking it's from the church. And a pre-recorded message that goes along every time you respond was, "Did you hit my car? I know you did. You left a note." What we didn't know is that Daryl had left a note on someone's car out there because he he had hit it or something. And so he went along, and at first he was serious. This is Pastor Daryl. And I can just hear his hands hitting his forehead. And then he's like, yeah, okay, guy, yeah. His voice, got a little higher. And finally the call ended, and I won't tell you the whole context, but the youth loved it. And then we crank called Jim Hawley after that. But aside from all that humor and picking on each other and, You know, our birthdays were a day apart. I'm going to miss our birthday texts and all the little things he used to tell me in passing. And, you know, he taught me how to fish out there at Lake Isabel. He took like 8 hours tying the hook on the string. But he was so compassionate because I didn't even bring a rod and reel or tackle that year. But I remember going out there and just wanting to sit with everybody and watching and wanted to be included. So he said, you can use mine, I'll teach you, and I'll use Wendy's. And Wendy's was broken. I remember I didn't catch anything, and he caught his limit, and then I finally started catching it. And I got so excited, so the next day he let me catch my limit and his. Last thing I want to say is everyone that's been offering their condolences keeps saying, you know, heaven gained an angel when Pastor Daryl passed. And I love correcting them, say, no. Pastor Daryl taught us that we don't turn into angels when we pass. That would be a demotion. So heaven didn't gain an angel, it gained a Daryl.
So this was let me tell you about the time. I don't remember the exact year, but this was pre-campers. We still had tents, and we were still at Coulter Road, so it's that long ago, and we had boats. Oh, was this cool. Now, Daryl he'd had a couple of boats, but this boat, I remember it was dark. I wanted to say purple, but maybe dark green, I don't remember. But it was as big as this room. Thing was huge. And it had an inboard with a jet, not a prop, but one of those jets. And when he cranked that thing up, it was whop, 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 whop. And he would because it was a hot rod. It's a bona fide hot rod, and and it had a 460 under the hood, a Ford 460, huge motor. And he'd get in there and let's talk when it's on the trailer still. Tell me about this. Oh, well, this is a thing that got that jet thing, and it's one of them kind of right there, and it's kind of big, and it doesn't really. Oh, yeah. Perry Hawkins was there. And we're standing there going, oh, yeah, that's cool, man. Yeah, you win. Well, how long is it? It's this kind of long. That's longer than anything we got. Yeah, that's right. You can imagine. And so we get in this thing, and there's a bunch of Coulter folk there. We happen to be Coulter folk then. And we got in that boat, and and he could load it up, man. You could just put as many people in it as you want. Usually, most boats, you got only 2 or 3 because you got to keep it light and get somebody out of the water. Well, I was on this kneeboard, and I'm out there, and I'm going around, and I'm tearing it up. Look at me. And I crashed, and it dislocated my arm. So I'm out there drowning, and my arm's out of socket, and I'm whoop. And I've come to the back of the boat, and it's making that noise, whoop, 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 whoop. And I can't, and Perry's back there going, give me your arm. I said, I can't. It's out of socket. And he goes, oh. And he reaches down there and grabs my vest. This is Perry. Reaches down there and grabs that vest, and Daryl steps back there and goes, what's taking so long? Because, we need to be doing this some more. He goes, what? Of course, I'm exaggerating. Daryl goes, what's taking so long? Because I'm not getting in the boat. Perry says, his arm's out of socket. Oh. And he goes, he just turned and left because he did not want to see this. Because, Daryl, he looked at it, and you could tell it was all had this big knot, and it was, and I'm hurting, man. And Perry reached down there, and he goes, get your arm up. I did this, and he took it and picked it up and goes, pop! Both of us went, wow. And Daryl's sitting there, and he goes, oh. That thing popped in, But anyway, that's one of the boats. And let me say this, later on, this wasn't that long ago, we're camping. He had their last trailer. And he goes, I like Johnny coming because he knows I can do this stuff. We say that. All these other guys, they sit around here and they wonder if I can do this stuff. I'm too soft. Johnny knows I can do it.
Can't do it like Johnny anyway. Love you, brother. Daryl, one of my very best friends. My accountability partner. It's tough to lose that. I was thinking about known him 33 years. Like everybody said, we were at Coulter.
I remember Johnny taking over his class because he was, at that time, he was wanting to devote everything to more on Wednesday night. And so Sunday mornings when he gave Johnny his class, my most nervous time ever was he started coming to my class because I was teaching at the same time. And why my class, I just don't think he wanted to put that on Johnny with him sitting in Johnny's class. But, I was nervous. But I tell you what, he always had a good word for you. Always came up and said how well you had done and mentioned specifics. And he made me each week plan a little harder to get ready for the next week, try and do a better job. But I was sitting back there chuckling, thinking about food. And he did love food. He didn't overeat food by any means. He was always watching that, but he loved food. He would always ask you. He'd always, what showed his friendship to me was he'd ask me for a bite, let me have a bite. I think some of my best memories ever are involved eating together, sitting on his back porch, just talking, being friends, laughing. It was good times. Another thing that popped in my mind was that was a kind of funny moment when you look at it now, looking backwards. We were in Cancun, and we were on the beach, and we were messing around, and Joni and Wendy had gone out into the ocean, and they were out there pretty far. And Daryl and I are sitting there talking, and we look up at the girls. They're waving. That hurt. They're waving. They're doing all this stuff. We're just waving back at them. Little did we know they were drowning, literally. Literally, they were out there, and the undertow had caught them. And Joni, she, in her younger days, she was a lifeguard. And so she knew what to do. And I remember Wendy was telling her, save yourself, just go, you go back. And that's really how serious it was. And I think the Lord just came and picked them and got them into shore. But we look back on that, what could have been a very treacherous situation. We thought they were all just, yeah. But thinking about, he was such a servant, He just wanted to take care of you anytime you were around him. You hear that old saying, the glass is half full. Well, my glass would be half full, and I think that was Daryl's way of looking at life. The glass is half full, it's not empty. We're blessed, we have things. Except when you were at his house. If your glass was half full, it was half empty to him, and he was ready to serve and fill it up. And I will miss those times. And I've got to repeat this, and I know some of you have heard it 100 times, and they're saying, Jim, shut up. But Monday morning, after we got the call Sunday, God just told me, you step forward. You don't step back, because that's what God would want you to do, and it's what Daryl Roach would do. So, wow, we got a lot. I don't know how long it'll take. Well, I do know I'll never get over this loss. But I tell you what, we cherish the memories, and we remember the teachings. The teachings were step forward.
Okay. I don't know what I need to say. I just feel like I need to just honor Pastor Daryl. As Troy said earlier, we did go to Coulter Road. Kind of felt like fish out of the water there. But the people there did make us feel at home and loved right from the start. And, you know, Pastor Daryl was right at the top, just making us feel loved. Excuse me. And included us when the church broke away, because we had no clue. I mean, we could have just been left trying to figure out where we would have been. And we were talking about it the other day. We have no idea, if we hadn't been included with more, where we would be at this point. And I'm so thankful that we are a part of this body. The love that we have received over the years for our family. Pastor Daryl remarried us on our 20th anniversary. He made us do our vows, and I said I didn't want to, and he said, yes, you are. And I said, oh, okay. So I did. You know, baptizing us, we were like one of the first families to be baptized. My kids, my cousins, my husband. I mean, it's just memories, a lot of, just amazing. And so many deaths in the family. Y'all have been there, Pastor Daryl. I mean, this church has just been there for us, just everything. Pastor Daryl encouraged me to tell my side of the story after the George Floyd incident last year. I didn't want to do that. That's not me. But he encouraged me, and I did. And I almost didn't when he said, you have to be here at 8:30. But I did, and I told him it's because I love you, Pastor Daryl, and that's why I'm doing it. So I don't know. I loved him, and I know he loved me. And every time I changed my hair, he would be like, well, Camellia, I don't know. You know, what color is that? I don't know, Pastor Daryl, but, well, I don't know. I was like, oh, well, you know. It never bothered me whether he liked it or not. It's just, it's okay. So I loved him no matter what. But I feel the pain just like everyone else. We love him and Wendy, the whole family. Courtney was telling me how her and Bonnie, you know, had sleepovers, and you know, our families have grown up together. So this church is family. So that's all I have to say.
Well, Camellia, I want you to know I've always loved every color you've chosen.
Thank you. I know a lot of people don't know this, but 11 years ago, the Lord promised me a pastor that I could speak to about all that God was telling me about myself. And I had to wait 5 years to meet that person. And when I came here, I didn't know that this was that place, but I knew I felt safe here. And then one day I was like, Catherine, I feel like I'm supposed to talk to Daryl and share my story. Do you think he'd be okay with that? She's like, yeah, email him. So I emailed him, and we sat for an hour, and I told him my whole story. I told him why I believed God made me the way I am and the ministry on my heart. And he wasn't afraid to ask me questions. And we spent a lot of time together, and we got to have several meetings. But something that makes this loss so hard is in those intimate meetings, he shared with me that he saw this church becoming a place for LGBT people in the coming years. And he saw lots of families coming, and he saw Madi and I being a part of their healing. And he also taught me that we had to be patient, and we couldn't rush this. And that was not like me. I like to do things when I'm ready, and he taught me patience. And then all of a sudden, he started, Leticia, I need you to come meet this new person with me. And like, Daryl. And he always took me to meet the new gay person. And I was like, okay. And I was terrified. I'm like, I don't like meeting people, Daryl. I was like his token gay. I'm like, okay. And then a couple weeks ago, there was a couple. I'm like, Monty, I have to introduce myself. Daryl wasn't here. I'm like, I have to go introduce myself. And I looked, and they were gone. And Monty's like, they're by the door. And I ran to the door, and I'm like, hey, I'm Leticia. And I was terrified. And then there was another couple that came because they heard me bragging that we were a worship team at whatever venue we were singing at, and they ended up coming to more because I was being a brat. And I didn't get to meet them. And so I go to the bathroom, and they're in there. I'm like, oh, my God, I'm Leticia. And I was so awkward. I was like, who does that? Who introduces themselves in the bathroom? But all week I kept thinking, my goodness, he taught me to do this. And I can do it by myself because I've been like, God, how am I going to do this without him? We had a plan, you know, like, and I got to tell him about, I don't know, I started a podcast 4 months ago and filmed the first one here with Jennifer, and I got to talk to him. He was going to be on my podcast, and he was pumped. But I got to say, you know, you called us out, and you said, if you're not walking in your calling and your purpose, that's sinning. You know, that's wrong. And I said, Daryl, you know, I'm finally doing what I know I was made to do, and it's because you called it out at me. And, man, he had big visions, and I'm thankful that he called out all these things in me, like running and chasing the people out of the church and weird things like that. Because he believed in all of us, and he was brave enough, and the elders and all of y'all fought for me to be on stage and sing, and that was like, gosh, just watching him chase down people to introduce himself, to let them know they were seen by a pastor. I never got to tell him, like, Daryl, that's healing, because it's a lot of pastors that have pushed us out of the church and have broken us. And just watching him do that healed so many wounds in my heart. And I can hear him. I've heard him all week, like, you can do this. You can host. You can chase them down. And I'm just so grateful that God answered that prayer through Daryl. And I'm grateful for y'all as our family, because y'all mean everything to us. And y'all have been very comforting to us this past week because we're terrified. So, yeah, I'm going to keep chasing people out the building in a good way.
Oh, my goodness. So I first heard about Daryl and Wendy from my sister because she started coming here as a teen, and I remember feeling so thankful for their leadership in her life. I'm 7 years older than her and kind of helped raise her when our parents were going through a really hard time. And so I kind of felt like a mama and acted like a mama to her a little bit. Yeah. And I just remember hearing about them. And Jason and I, it feels like we've been in every church, myself growing up, and then in our marriage, it feels like we've been in pretty much every church in the city, and we had been burned also by a lot of pastoral care. And I was leading worship at a church several years back, and I had this vision. It was actually like a dream/vision, and I was sitting in a room with people, and somebody kept putting this cloak over my shoulders. And in the dream, I kept pushing it off with my shoulders, and they'd put it back on and I'd push it off, and they'd put it back on and I'd push it off. And eventually I got to the point where I just got so fed up, and I spun around and I said, stop putting that on me. I'm done performing. And at that moment, I realized that God was calling me out of churches that I had to perform in. And he said, I'm gonna bring you to a place that you don't have to perform anymore. And we came here for a night of worship. Lyndall prophesied over me, told me that I was pregnant after 2.5 years of unexplained infertility and a miscarriage. And I went through a season of not knowing if I was or wasn't, and then ultimately found out that I was. And that was when we were like, okay, I think we're supposed to go to more. And there were so many things that held us back for so long. I think a lot of fears, a lot of religious beliefs, from our upbringings. And we came and immediately fell in love, and we were family by this point. We had spent a lot of time around Daryl. But it was being in those behind the scenes moments with him and seeing that he was the exact same person that he was on stage, and getting to literally drink a glass of whiskey or beer with your pastor and them not judging you, or like, you know, he would drink right alongside us and show us that, like, this is okay. This can be done healthily. And talking about Jesus in those moments. And, you know, the thing that I and Jason loved the most, Jason is at home taking care of Peyton tonight, but I wanted to speak on his behalf because Jason is not somebody that trusts very easily. And he just said, he was like, I felt like I could tell Daryl anything. And listening to everybody share tonight, he literally made every single person feel that way. Every person. And as I'm listening to everybody speaking, I'm like, and this is something that I noticed about him, that I've never, ever in my life seen someone exemplify Jesus better than Daryl Roach did. He was just fantastic at it. And everything that Jesus embodied, I saw in Daryl. And I know that Jesus and Daryl's not Jesus, I know that. But he really did embody the love of Christ better than any human I had ever seen. And I love getting to hear everyone's stories, and I love that we're getting to honor him in that way, because he was just an amazing man, and can't wait till we get to celebrate with him again.
So my wife and I, Terry, we don't like to admit that we lived in California as long as we did. Just doesn't make us Californians. It just meant that we lived there for a long time. So we brought these weird ideas and characteristics along with us to Texas. Eventually, as we went through Arizona and New Mexico and finally found a place that felt like home. And I remember, meeting Catherine and meeting Trey and meeting Johnny and Carol and meeting Lyndall and just meeting all these different people that are in our family. Because now y'all in my family, even if you don't know who I am, but that's okay. You'll figure it out. But all I knew is that if his loved ones, if the ones that he has to bear his soul to, or gets to bear his soul to, the families, the close family, friends, and the all you old guys from the old days, I wish I was part of that. I wish I had been part of that. I feel like I am, just because I get to hear a lot of this stuff a lot. I hang around with Johnny a little bit more than I should probably, but that's okay. But I realized that if these people are a reflection of my pastor, then this guy's like, it's almost like, is he a real human being, or has he been altered somehow? Does he have one foot, on terra firma and another foot in God's kingdom? And then, and it hasn't been very long, just maybe a month ago, but I had a little bit of a problem, and I went into his office, and we went into the conference room, the big conference room, and I was all nervous because I'm with the pastor, and I thought that I was already preparing myself for something, negative, like a correction, like a punishment, like let's realign your train of thought, Mr. Hughes. And I started to say something to the effect of like, so I think I should do this because I kind of feel like I'm not qualified. And Daryl goes, but he wasn't tense. He was laughing at the same time he was doing this, which is kind of funny. He's laughing while he's rubbing his forehead. That was kind of different. So he's smiling and laughing while he's rubbing his forehead, and he goes, Rick, if anything, brother, you're you're overqualified. The qualification isn't anything you do or don't do. It's already done. It's already done, Rick. And it just hit me like literally I had, I don't know, a road to Emmaus kind of experience. And I recognized what Daryl recognized in me. And he's only known me he's only known me for 5 years or however long we've been here. And I saw in his face, I saw in his eyes what he saw in me. And I couldn't understand it at first, why somebody was more caring about the soul, the spirit that existed in this guy. He was more concerned about me and knew more about me and wanted me to be me more than I did, because I didn't even know who I was, but he told me who I was in that room. He told me who I was. I'll never forget that. And the door itself, when I walked out of that room, it's like the door was changing, because everything else around me, the room, the way I felt about myself, the way I felt about what love and life is all supposed to be, kind of like it is here most of the time. And I realized that I was being changed as I listened to my pastor, because my pastor was only saying the truth. He was only agreeing with God, what God had already told, everybody that needed to know about me, the very things that I didn't believe in about myself. So I just want to say, especially to his closest family members, that I really love you guys, and I know how much Daryl is in all of us. I kind of feel like sometimes I'm walking around looking in people's faces to see if I can see like a Daryl kind of face in there. Yeah, there it is. And so, like, we talk about looking for Jesus, or trying to find Jesus in somebody, but I believe and I believe it's totally okay if we look at each other and we try to look for Daryl, because he's there. He's here. He's here in our hearts. He's here in this atmosphere of love and family and support, and he was just a great guy, and I really love him and miss him, and I hope that we get to have fun. Maybe he can help me tie some lures onto my fishing line too.
Gosh, there's so many things I could say. So many people talked about cute little things. I'm like, oh, I want to say something about that too, and I want to say something about that too, because there's so many little quirks about Daryl. And one of them was how he would always go get snacks. I would always be back there making my lunch, and I'd see him coming back. Are you coming to get a snack? And I would kind of tell him what we had, because I always also got snacks all the time. And then just making him food. The last time he got to come to my house, I got to make him salmon, the salmon that Leticia taught me how to make, and I always loved making it for him because he loved it so much, and he would always tell me how, oh, you just make salmon perfect every time. And then the last meal he actually got to eat that I made him was chicken and dumplings, because I made it on our trip, and he said, oh, it's the best you've ever made. Just, and he was always doing that with everything, and I think I said that at this service, that everything that I did, he just made me feel like I was the best at it, that I did the best, and so sweet. Something that I love so much about him and Wendy, that I've always just loved about just being here, is when I came here, I was just such a kid, and I was a baby, and I was the baby to everybody, and everyone kind of took me under their wing, and I kind of liked it that way. I was like, oh, yeah, I'm the little sister, I'm the baby. And he treated me like an adult. Because he definitely was so sweet and kind, but when he talked to me, especially in meetings about, worshiping, or especially when I came on as the worship leader, he just treated me like an adult. and said, called out like 5-10 years from when I started, talk to me like I was that person. And I'm like, Daryl, I don't even really know what I'm doing, And he would do that, and it just made me I don't know, feel so respected and so honored in this place, and that was so important to me. And like, I'll never forget, though, this is before I was the worship leader, whenever I was, I don't know how old I was, 19, maybe. I remember going into his office, and we would have meetings on and off again, and he would just always check in, and he would always ask me about boys. He'd be like, any boys in your life? And I'd be like, most of the time, I'm like, no. You know anybody? No, I wouldn't really say that, but just like it was funny. Like, he would always ask me about boys, and the answer was always no. Until one day, he asked me about boys, and I said, well, there's this one person, but it's kind of awkward because he's your son. And I had a crush on Trey, and we had known each other for a few years, but it was so sweet. I'll never forget his face. And he just smiled, like this big smile, like he was so proud that I would, that I liked his son. I'm like, oh, you're happy about this. Like, this is so sweet. And the reason is because I had been meeting with him since I was so young, and he had walked through some things. And I mean, he knew things about me that you don't want your in-laws to know about you. Both of them know things about me you don't want your in-laws to know, but I just feel like that's so important to say, because when I came in here and they know that about me, then after they knew all the stuff, after they had walked through all those things with me, they wanted me to be the worship leader. They were like, you're going to be the worship leader. I'm like, I am not qualified. And like, yes, you are. You can do it. And I'm like, okay. And then whenever I liked Trey, then they're like so happy for me to be their daughter-in-law. And it's just like the grace that he exemplified is just so important. It's so important. And I just want to say that it's important to all of us. It's important to all of the leadership. I know it is. And I know that it's important to every single person that sat here and got to learn from him and got to meet him. And it's not gone away because he's gone. So anyways, that's all. I just wanted to say that. Oh, no, actually one more thing. Sorry. The song Kindness that I wrote, I wrote it to God. I wrote it about God. But whenever I played it at his service, I was like, this is about Daryl too. Like, his kindness and his mercy had unraveled us all. We would always say that we would always say that about more, as you come to kind of be unraveled. All of us have been unraveled. If you've been here long enough, you know what I mean. And just who he was for us is just so important. And I want to point that out, because I had not even really realized. And he was so happy about that song when I wrote it. And I was so proud to always show him my songs, because he was so supportive. And gosh, Daryl, we love you.
I wasn't going to do this, but Daryl always got me up on the stage, and then I was like, but I haven't done it in forever. I know, right? But I don't know if you guys know that Jared and I had trouble almost immediately when we got married, and we weren't going to be together. And it's kind of awkward to talk about that up here, but here we are, and I'm looking at you, baby. But it was a problem with his ex, and we came to meet with Daryl. And Daryl, the first thing he said to me is, I want you to know that all dogs return to their vomit. And I immediately fell in love with this man. I was like, this is the most awesome pastor. And so I ended up staying with JR, and Daryl counseled him into being an incredible husband. And we have the world. We have great kids. We have a beautiful relationship, a beautiful home. And, of course, God was in it, but Daryl was there. And when it was said at the funeral that he cooked Wendy breakfast every morning and called her princess. I looked at JR and touched his face and whispered, "You learned well," because that sounds just like my man, you know. And Daryl walked us through that. And he also was on my Facebook, and he read one. I struggled with my children and with addiction, and there's some choice words that I post, and in fact, this week, I always run it through my mind. I'm like, what will Daryl think of this when I post this? And now I'm just out there crazy. I mean, there's nobody for me to be like, who's going to care? Well, Daryl, he keeps me in line. So crap, y'all watch out. But I wrote something about addiction when my boys were struggling. And he called me and asked me to read it on stage. Of course, he said, he printed it off and he marked out a few words. He's like, let's find substitutes for these. But he really cared. And, and it's been since that moment that it's been on the prayer list that we pray for people with meth addictions and drug addictions. He always asked about them. And when Drew passed away, I could just feel him loving me, all of you really. And we talked a lot about me getting on stage and thanking everybody for what you guys did during that time. And he always encouraged me, and I'd just be like, I want to, but I'm not ready because I'm a mess. I'm still a mess. But I had so many questions when Drew died, and Daryl would come to my home, and I almost even transferred my anger onto Daryl. And he was okay with that, and I appreciated it because I had these questions. I'm like, is God all powerful and let my child die? Or did he not know, or did he not know and he's not all powerful? And Daryl just looked at me with such love and said, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is or why Drew is gone. And I appreciated that because I've never fit in at a church. I'm rough around the edges. But Daryl made me feel like I was worthwhile. And he put me up on stage for Seder, and he always just told me, I just enjoy you. You are delightful. And I'm really going to miss him. I wish I had organized this better, but I felt like I needed to get up here, like she said, just to honor him because he was so huge in our life, and what we have today has so much to do with what he poured into each one of us as individuals and into our family. And I also appreciate everyone here too. And goodbye. Awkward.
I'm going to try not to make this into a novel, but it could be a story. I met Daryl in 2003. I just moved back to Amarillo after living in several places in the state while I was in career building mode. I came back here as a superintendent, and I thought I was set. Well, that wasn't exactly the case, but I think before I actually moved back, my daughter and Alexis and her husband Kevin invited me to church when it was in Wellington Square. So it was small, it was dark, it was weird. The lighting, yeah, it wasn't dark spiritually. But anyway, but I had been baptized in the Holy Spirit since 1978, and I don't know whether there are any former Trinity people here. We used to have tons of them, but Trinity was my home church, and so while I was moving all over the state, whenever I came home, I went to Trinity. And when I lived in Waco, I went to Antioch Church, which is the birthplace of John and Maria Lair's son and his outreach. Yeah, and actually, while you may remember this, the two missionary girls that were taken captive in Iran, and God miraculously released them. So I was there at that church during that period of time. So I've been under some really, really powerful preachers, teachers. And so when Alexis wanted me, after I'd moved back and she wanted me to go to more I was fairly unimpressed. um, but I really didn't get to know Daryl personally until I had a major crisis in my life, and that was, for those of you that don't know, I have 4 daughters. Alexis is my youngest, and she has a twin sister, Jessica, who is profoundly handicapped. And the reason that I left my superintendent's position was because Jessica was mysteriously ill. They never really knew what was wrong, but she was in ICU for 7 weeks, and they eventually told us that there was nothing else that they could do and we should put her in hospice. And so needless to say, I had many conversations with Daryl through that period of time, and the times that he and so many in this body that are still here and no longer here came and prayed with her. But it was when I met him during that crisis period that, you know, my daughter's dying and I no longer have a job and I'm unemployed, and it was a little stressful. And so also I have, besides Jessica, I have 3 daughters, and there's a lot of drama involved in having 3 daughters. And also as a single woman, there were various times that I dated people either in the church or outside of the church, and that can be a lot of drama too. But what I want to say about Daryl counseling is that counseling a single woman is entirely different than counseling a man or a couple. And so anytime he counseled with me, he had to make some major arrangements to do it appropriately and always have Wendy there. And he was just always so gracious about it. I loved him because he always took my side against my daughters, even though I'm sure he never told them that. But he always did. So I loved that. But my main point in telling you this is that even though I had sat under great preachers, I never was shepherded like I was by Daryl, ever. And now I will cry. For those of you that do know Jessica, you know that for a long time, she was 27 at the time that she almost died. She's 42 now, so however many years that is. But she came to church for many years, and we usually sat right back there towards the back, and she was in her wheelchair, and the church loved her. And it was so different because, y'all, there was a church that she went to at one time that actually asked me to have her sit in the foyer in front of the TV so that it didn't mess up their recordings. Because she would sometimes, like Chloe, she would praise the Lord. But Daryl, when she would make her noises, he always said she always knew the appropriate time and that she was saying amen. And I promise you, she was. She always knew the time. I had no idea about Chloe when I first met Daryl, and I'm sure that was a part of his heart for her. But he just loved her. He just loved her, and he loved all of us. He has counseled all of my daughters and me. And my first question when I heard about it was, Daryl has prayed 1,000 prayers for Jessica. The last time that I talked to him, which was every time that I talked to him, he asked about Jessica because she's not been able to come to church for a number of years now. But my first question was, he prayed 1,000 prayers for her, and she's still here, and he's not. And I don't understand. My thoughts are not his thoughts, and his thoughts are higher than mine. But for a single woman with 4 dramatic daughters, he was a blessing in my life, and I will miss him.
So, y'all need to pray for the staff, because now this is our official boss. No, I'm just joking. I just wanted to give some shade to Lyndall. For, I think, maybe the first 3 years that I worked here, I felt like Lyndall hated me. He does not hate me. I'm just saying that. But, like, Daryl was the one that kind of, like, brought me on, and I felt like Lyndall had to, like, deal with me. And so one day I just realized that he was just harsher because that was what he had to do. And it was really Daryl who would tell him to deal with us. And so then one day my frustration moved to Daryl, not Lyndall. So, most of the time. No, but I had no intention of coming to more, and a lot of y'all know my story, but like Robert had came here first, and I was like, I'm really not coming here. I'm not going to more. I'd only been here like twice before, and I thought, maybe there is some stuff in the basement. No. And so I was pretty content, but not content where I was. And I came for a Sunday sermon or a Sunday service when I went on maternity leave with my youngest. And then I ended up coming for a prayer night like a couple months later. I was going to tell Wendy I want to see the paper, like my first time, just because it means something to me. Anyway, so I remember sitting like over here, and Catherine was worshiping, and I heard the Lord say that He wanted me to get on the microphone. And I was like, these people do not know me. And I have never been on a microphone. And I think it was like 15 minutes before the prayer night was done, I finally was obedient to the Lord. And as soon as I got done, if you've been here long enough, it's the walk of shame back to your seat. Every time it's like you get the guts to get up here, and then you're like, crap, I got to walk back. I still feel that way all these years later. Anyway, and so I walked back to my seat, and Daryl didn't know me. I don't think I hadn't even met him the first time I came for Sunday service, but he said, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I felt the Lord. And then he went into prophesying over me, and he didn't it was funny because he was like, I don't want to make you feel stupid, but let me just say something to you. And from that night on, I knew that this was home for me. And 7 years later, 8 years later, 8.5 years later, being here, I can't help but to think of certain things, but I'd have to meet with him all the time, and something that Kat said. He would say, if you can see the woman 5 years from now, where you've come from 5 years of being here, you would just marvel at what the Lord has done. And he always had this. Over the last few years, he'd say, I can't wait to see you when you're 50. And I would think, I am a long ways off from 50. How the heck, but recently he had said that to me again. And we were talking in our staff meeting, and he said something. I don't even know why he said it, but nobody else knew that. But he had shared it. I think it's just the season of life I'm in. And, I remember finding out and thinking, I feel gypped. I thought he was going to get to be there, in seasons of life going forward. And, what am I going to do now? But Lyndall said last week in our meeting, he said that he wanted to take the time to meet with all of us. And not the same way, because they're not the same people, but we love him, and we're excited that I'm just thankful you're still here. And I just want to tell you that, because I don't know what I would do if you weren't still here. So that's my story.
I'm not real good at talking in front of people, but let's see. When your heart's beating and your hands are sweaty, you're supposed to do it. So, and it hasn't stopped. So in I'm holding the Kleenex. That usually helps. In 2001, I was going through a really horrible nightmare in life that continued on for several years. But anyway, so that's where I was at the time, and I was not able to go to church. And I had been in church all my life because my parents, as most of you know, were pastors here in Amarillo, and so it was a really weird place to not be able to go. But it was a really special time because God showed me how much He loved me outside of church, and that meant a lot because when you grow up in church, it's special, but it took, He just shared with me different ways and showed me how much He loved me. And I have 4 boys. I thought I was a good follow-up to yours because being a single woman as well, gone through divorce and nightmare, and was in a really strange place. And so I had I stayed out for a while, and then I felt I need to get back into a church for my boys as well as for me. And so I went all kinds of churches. I even went to Canyon Methodist Church for a while. Not that that's a great church. And I thought it was so cool. They went to the altar every Sunday. I just tried different places, and because I knew my boys need to be, and I did too. I missed it. And so my mom said, "Why don't you go try more?" She was a Kevin Prosh fan, and she said, "Kevin's there, and I've heard really good things." And so that was in 2001. So I took the boys, and we went, and I'm a realtor, and so sometimes people find a house when they first walk in, and that's kind of how it was for me. I felt like, oh, this is it. I just knew the spirit and the attitude and the opening, welcome, not really any person, just I felt it. And so I started coming, and at that time, being a single woman, I want to bring that up again because I knew I needed different, being single, I needed manly authority in my life, and also God, but of course God, but men. So being a realtor, I had a broker that, was over my business. But I eventually thought of Daryl as that spiritual covering, this church as spiritual covering that I needed. And then I think my other one was probably my dad, who lived out of town, but also Jimmy. And so I really took that kind of thing serious, and I'm pretty quiet and all that. But so anyway, my boys were teenagers, and those years can be tough, and without the male influence, they tested me a lot, and but they were great. They're really amazing boys, and I know a lot of you know them. And so anyway, I was having some trouble with my oldest, and my dad had given me a lot of freedom as a teenager, and nobody told us that we were preacher's kids. PKs. And I didn't know this until later in life that gave you a card to be wild. So we were actually really good preacher's kids. And so I thought, well, I'm going to do the same. Well, he just kind of took advantage of this opportunity. So I thought, well, I need to talk to someone. So I decided to ask Daryl for some help. So it was over at the Wellington church, and so I'm telling him what's going on, and he's asking, about Jarrett and all that. And it was his senior year, and you know, I'm a mom, so this is a big deal to me. And he says, well, and Jared's birthday happened to be in the summer before his senior year, so he was 18. So Daryl says, well, Merlina, did you know that he could go to war? And it just blew my mind because I thought, what? No, I didn't know that. He's my son, and he's supposed to be in at midnight or whatever the curfew was. He's not supposed to be running around. Well, he could go to war. And that just completely changed my thinking of him, and it really helped. And along the way, you know, a lot of you guys reached out to my boys, and yes, Johnny, I am back. I came last night, and it was the wrong night. So, anyway, so, but I do appreciate all those years. That's what came back to my mind Monday, just flooded with all the memories, and you know, that's how I looked at you guys as my spiritual covering, and reaching out to my boys along the way and putting nuggets of wisdom in their lives, and some of them more than others because, like I said, they were teenagers and they were leaving and marrying, and I'm also thankful I got to baptize my two youngest ones here, and just so many different things. All of my family, so many got involved, came along after, and y'all know all of them, and even Grandma Clock, he's up there with her. So I really appreciate, I mean, we've been talking, my mom and Jimmy, and even that, you know, he used to go and visit my grandma and in her little space and make efforts. And then another special person was Don Clay that came back from, he was from our church, and Pastor Daryl went and met with him every single week, and that just meant so much to his family and to us because he was like family to us. And anyway, along the way I invited lots of people to more, but they didn't always stick. And it was always funny because people would look at me like, is she dating that person? And I wasn't. It was always because I would tell people, you should go to more. And I remember there was this one group, this whole family that came in, and I had invited them, and Daryl said, Merlina, you should, why aren't you dating that guy? They came to church for you. And I was like, well, shouldn't the guy ask me out? It was just funny because it was just really odd. It was like, well, I invited him to church. Anyway, that was a funny memory that came back. And I know my dad got to come one time, and Kevin ministered to him, and that really meant a lot to us as well. So there's just so many times and memories and joys and all of it. But my main thing I wanted to say is that I always came here for the preaching. I thought, Daryl, I love the music. I love so many things about it. But the preaching was what I loved so much. And I love the truth. I love the real. And so anyway, I just wanted to share a variety of memories and thoughts. Hope that turned out like I wanted it.
Hello, my name is Todrick Hunt, and I am a Daryl-holic. So I'm here to confess the last time I partook of Daryl. No. I've been in a really thankful posture because there are people in this church who are responsible for my redemption in a time when I didn't know I needed it. I had a meeting with Daryl when I first got here and told him, he was like, so what's it like when you go home? Like, what do you do when you go home? And I was like, honestly, I go into the middle of the room and I turn off all the lights and I just kind of rock because the light is noisy. There's a bunch of noise in my head and it's hard to quiet the noise. It's hard to find Todrick, and the only way I can find Todrick is by doing that, just sitting in the middle of a dark room, not thinking anything, just trying to find me. Because the industry that I was in deep taught me that darkness was more of a friend to me than light could ever be, basically. So I didn't want to be part of anybody's church. I didn't want to be on nobody's worship team. Matt can tell you, don't ask me, not doing it. I say as a testimony a lot, a time that I was with a particular celebrity and I told him, if you could just, even when it's your darkest moment, if you can just find that one pin drop of light in the middle of the darkness, there's hope. And you know, that's what more has been to me. And I know that a body is sick without his head, and I know more couldn't have been that without Daryl. And so in that meeting, I don't know how, but God actually spoke to him and reverberated that particular thing that I use as a testimony that I never told him before. And he looked at me and he said, Todrick, you know, all you need is a small bit of light. That's all you need. And you just hold on to that light until you find yourself covered in it. And the phenomenon that it was Daryl Roach as an atmosphere, I'm so thankful for, and I'm so thankful for everybody that's here and saying the things that you are, because it's just further proof that, man, he was such a great guy. I've always said my mantra is acceptance. And there was a time when I first started coming here where I didn't accept me, you know. I thought I was just a circus clown, I guess, and could do a few tricks, and then, you know, people paid me for it, and I get off and try to figure out where I was again. So I didn't accept me, but Daryl had a way of teaching me that, you know what, you're all right, and you're worthy of being accepted by yourself. If you love yourself first, then that will reverberate to everybody else. And I just appreciate the reminder that Daryl was that, you know what, take it a day at a time. And, you know, he has, like everyone's been saying, a way of helping you accept where you are in your particular timeline, and then working out your own soul salvation, like Philemon, I think 2:6 says. I don't know the exact verse, but and that's what this place has been, and I'm thankful that that's what Daryl was to me, was the quiet place in the middle of my dark noise, to help me find my center, and then be able to be a true friend and find what true love is, so that I can have a wife and a daughter and friends and a church family. So thank God for Daryl, and I praise Jesus for the experience that he was. I think God, for letting me be the sparrow that he saw and cared for in the midst of this crazy world, big world. So, yeah, here's to Daryl. May his memory reign on. So.
Do you remember the moment when you heard that Daryl was dead? And the motions that you went through, and you know, and I mean, I remember it well. I was with my family, and the prayers that you've had, talking to God since then. And here's my thoughts, my prayers to God. But God, what? Who? What now? On and on and on, you know. But God, who's going to do this thing? Never once was there we're about to fall apart. And I said, he said to me at one point, he said, you do remember this is about me. Yes, sir. I know that. I don't like this. He said, I know. And I said, well, has he taught us everything? And he said, about you, God? He went, yeah, many times. He said, I'm not a respecter of man. I love you as much as I love him. I love everybody as much as I love that guy. And I know this. I can't look at you. I know. That God Almighty's still in control. And he's gonna bring to this place someone who has the heart of Daryl Roach, who has the heart of Jesus Christ. There's the common ground. And so with that said, that's our prayers, y'all, that we move forward in the way we've been moving forward. That we move forward. You know, we've got this moment will pass. We'll never forget. How do you forget this? And so we'll move forward, and we know this. Thank you, God. Thank you, God, for what we've had, and thank you, God, for what you're about to give us.
Just like it says on the wall, a church as unique as you. And that's what we are. We're going to close. I just wanted to close with Daryl's favorite song. So when this song is over, you'll be dismissed. Thank you for coming and sharing. I know Daryl, just like you know Daryl, but to hear the individuality of every person is the testament of a great man. A man, but a great man. And just to hear that he was such that man, that kind person to everyone. Just blessed to serve under him and to know him. And so we're gonna finish with this.
And so, God, my prayer is that we would just be able to show the world that you are a God of love and that you are a God of kindness. God, you're so sweet. And I just pray, Lord, that you would just unravel our thoughts and our mindsets that are wrong, that are different from your heart, God. That's what I pray in this song, that this song would do that. Because people need to know that you're about love. You're not about anything else. You're just about love, and that's what you've told us to do. So we're going to love one another, and we're going to love ourselves well, and we're going to love people well. And God, you're going to show us how to do that. And it's through your kindness that you have. Is leading me away from the same beaten road I always take. You've always shown me when to change my mind. Oh, kindness is showing me to love with no disown every stone of judgment I have thrown. Over and over and over again, you challenge the thoughts that are inside my head, a gentle push when I am stuck in my way. Yes, over and over and over again, you challenge the thoughts that are inside my head with a gentle push when I am stuck in my way. You're leading me to disown every stone of judgment I have thrown. And kindness, mercy, who you are has unraveled me. Kindness, mercy, you've taken off the yoke, you've unburdened me. It's kindness, your mercy, who you are has unraveled me. Kindness, mercy, you've taken off the yoke, you've unburdened me. Oh, you've unburdened me. Thank you, Jesus. You took off all the pressure. You showed me